Okay, so Hume's going to get a little weird on us now. And he's going to begin by telling us to make something happen, cause something to occur. So as a good team player, I might move my pen across the screen right here. And then he says, okay, so something just happened. John caused a pen to move across the screen. And then he's going to point at you. And he's going to say, do something. Make something happen. So make something happen. So maybe you did something like this. Maybe you banged your knuckle on your desk or your table and you say, I caused an event to occur. The event was the sound of the effect was the sound of my knuckle hitting the table. There was a cause, there was an effect. One event, me banging the table, caused another event, the sounding of the knuckle banging. And so then Hume's going to look at us and say, well, first what he'd do is he'd take his glasses and he'd put them like right down at the edge of his nose so that he could look over the tops of them at us. And then he's going to say something like, so you think you know that causation exists in reality? And we're going to say, well, yeah, of course. Causation exists in reality. You just saw me cause my pen to move across the screen. You just caused the person on the other end of this to you heard that person cause the sound of knuckle banging on the table. Absolutely. There are causes and there are effects. These are real. I see them every day, Hume. Okay? And then he's going to look at us and he's going to say, all right, fair enough. Well, how would you go about proving that these cause and effect relationships actually exist? You say they exist. You say causation exists in reality. How would you prove it? And we might do something like what Hume did as an illustration in his own writing. He might say, look, you go to a pool table, you pick up a stick, you strike the cue ball, that causes the effect of the pool ball traveling some distance across the table, and then it strikes another billiard ball, and that causes that second billiard ball to then also move some distance across the table. And Hume's going to say, well, what's the cause? Like, where is it? I saw a pool stick move. I saw a ball move. I can see the pool table. Where exactly is the cause? Where is it? And we're looking at Hume and we're saying, well, I can't point to it. I just know that first this event happened, and so then this event happened. And the first event caused the second event. And then Hume's going to look at us and he's going to say, so this causation thing is so real that when X happens, always it will be followed by Y? That seems pretty serious. Where exactly is this causation that is such a reliable, dependable feature of reality that we can expect it to always work in a particular way? Is it always the case that when we strike the cue ball, that will cause some movement in the cue ball or some transfer of energy into the cue ball? Is it necessary? In other words, is it logically necessary that the cue ball move some distance after being struck with the pool cue, in the same way that it's logically necessary that it either be raining or not raining at a given moment? And we'd say, well, no, it's not like that. It's not a logical necessity that one event follow the other. And then Hume might accuse us of confusing causality versus seriality. In other words, just because one event seems to follow from an earlier event doesn't necessarily mean that the earlier event caused the second event. They may have happened one after the other, but that doesn't necessarily mean that one caused the other. In fact, we can point to lots of instances where events occurred in a particular order, but there was no causation involved there. So yes, maybe somebody was mumbling a spell next to a cow, and then the next day that cow dropped dead, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the spell was the cause of the cow's death. You can think of plenty of things that we would chalk up to coincidence. They are incidents that are right? They happen either at the same time or one after the other, and there appears to be some cause-effect relationship between these two things, but in actuality there's not. And so Hume would want to know, like, well, how do you know that's not the case here? And we'd say, because every time I hit the cue ball with the pool stick, it moves in the same damn way, Hume. And he might say, well, I get that you expect that to occur over and over and over again in the same way. I totally get it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a fact that it will occur that way. The only way it could be a fact that it would occur that way is if you could demonstrate for me that the principle of causation exists in reality. And so far, all you've been able to do is point at phenomenon that you think illustrate cause and effect. But you haven't actually been able to demonstrate that causation is real. Now, this is going to be kind of devastating to Locke. Because remember, what Locke says is, when we make claims to knowledge, we're making synthetic propositions. We're making a posteriori propositions. These are statements that we think these are statements about reality that we think reflect the way that reality actually is. And these statements that we make can be traced back to experiences that we've had. They're not logically true by necessity, like all bachelors or unmarried men is logically true by definition. These are statements that we say are true about reality based on experiences we've had. So, for example, with the lemons, we look at the lemon and we say, oh my gosh, look at that lemon. Isn't it a funny shape? It's perfectly round, right? And so we can identify this quality to the lemon, and we can make a claim about it. And when somebody says, is that true? Is it really perfectly round? And then we can go and look at the lemon and determine, is it perfectly round? Now, what Locke says is going on here is that quality of shape that's in the lemon is a quality that exists independently of us. The lemon does not depend on us to have shape, like the lemon depends on us to have sourness, right? The lemon doesn't depend on us to have shape, doesn't depend on us for size or its position, its weight, any of those things. Those are those primary features or primary qualities that Locke talks about, that inhere in the object itself. And what's really important is that Locke claims it's those primary qualities like shape that kind of force into our awareness the lemon. It's that primary quality that actively causes our awareness of the lemons. Okay? We don't go seeking out the lemon. The lemon kind of seeks our awareness out once it comes into our visual field, right? We can't not see it once it comes into our visual field. And that, Locke says, is because these primary qualities of the lemon are forcing itself into our awareness. But Hume is raising doubts about the existence of causation. And Hume is saying something like this. All right, if I can get you to suspect that causation may not actually be a real feature of reality, then how can you say some unidentifiable substance causes the experience of sense data? Because that's what Locke says, right? It's that primary quality that's causing our awareness of the thing. But Locke is saying, you can't even prove that cause exists, let alone exists in that object. Maybe there's a common sense experience of causation that we have, but that doesn't mean there's justification for the belief that causation actually exists. Right? So think about that. That's a pretty significant challenge. Yes, there are things that we experience on a day-to-day basis that appear to be caused. And that makes things really predictable and reliable and makes the world a lot easier to live in. But does that necessarily mean that causation is a real phenomenon? Because we can think back to lots of theories over time that people claimed explained reality, like, not the germ theory of illness. What was prior to the germ theory of illness? Oh, for crying out loud. Whatever the theory of illness was before the germ theory, humors, or anyway, I shouldn't have gone down this road. We've had theories about why things have occurred in the past. And we've learned that those things have been wrong. So let's think about like plate tectonics or continental drift. And so Locke is saying to us, you've got this theory of causation that nicely explains events that you witness, but that doesn't necessarily mean that causation is real. And if causation isn't necessarily real, we can't say our sense data experience is caused by substance. And so if we can't say that with 100% certainty, how can we say that the knowledge that we gain of the world through our experiences is actually existent? How can we claim that the knowledge that we have that is supposedly being caused by the things that exist in reality is really knowledge of the world, when we can't even prove that causation exists, which would be necessary for us to have that knowledge of the world in the first place. So meditate on this idea of causation. How would you prove it exists? How would you prove that it's not just wild coincidence that events seem to follow one another? Can you figure out a way to point to somehow prove that causation is a real feature of reality? Because if we can't, then Locke's theories of knowledge and a lot of our theories are going to become really suspect.